Okay, and now we're recording. So, hello everyone. Good evening. My name is Kyle Blaylock. I am the founder of the Research and Manuscript Publishing Club. This is our first general body meeting, and we're going to be today talking about review articles. I do apologize that this first meeting is over Zoom. There were just too many schedule conflicts. Some of you may not know this, but I am currently on rotation, so I'm currently rotating at Spirit and Violent in the critical care unit. I've been wanting to try and start this club for the last 2 years. I originally proposed the idea of the club back when I was a second year, and it just never ended up happening. But I'm so happy now that we're able to get this started. So, with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead. Okay, so we'll first talk about the goals of the club. Okay, and then we'll go into more details from here. So the research is self-directed, as some of you may know. So the club will not get you published in of itself. However, this club will provide you resources, and it will provide you mentorship, and it will provide you instructions, right, which will increase the likelihood of you getting published, right? Research is hard, and there's not always clear guidelines on how to go about it, or where to go, where to start. So my goal is to take my experiences and what I've learned over the last 3 years and pass it on to as many people as possible to try and help others get published. So there is a program called the NEMA Scholars Program. The NEMA Scholars Program is based out of Naples, Florida. And it is a team of physicians, it is a team of medical writers, and Dr. Brevi, who's on the call today, also is a part of the NEMA Scholars Program. And their objective is to try and get students published. So they'll offer mentorship, they'll help you edit your papers. And they even have a channel through Curious. Curious is an open access journal. And for students, it's free of charge once it gets approved. So there's no fee. A lot of journals charge thousands of dollars to publish a manuscript. Like JAMA, for example, is $3,000, and sometimes it's even higher. A lot of students can't afford that. So Curious will allow you to publish free of charge once you get approved. And then there's 3 parts of research. Of course, you have the information that's out there. You got to find it and organize it. Writing the manuscript takes a while, and editing it, and then of course going through peer review. So this club, my goal is to obviously present you information which will be useful to kind of get you started. But I really also want this to be a very welcoming environment. So once we get past the initial part where we're going through information and kind of delving into the world of research, I also want this to be kind of a laid-back environment. So my idea of how I want to structure the club is I want to have part of it being formal, where we're going over actual things about research, and then part of it I want it to be more about talking, collaborating and getting to know each other, and then of course asking questions about research in a more casual way. So the first part of this is going to be just me presenting information. And the second half of this is going to be more casual. We're just talking about research and talking about our experiences. So with that said, I want to introduce the members of the e-board. So one by one, I'm going to go through the slides here. And when you come up on the slide, if you could just say one thing about yourself, that would be great. So as I said, my name is Kyle Blaylock. I am the club founder. I'm also a NEMA mentor. And I really enjoy research and helping other students. And then next we have Dr. Brevi.
Yes, hi. I'm adjunct clinical professor at the pharmacy school. I've been involved teaching for the past 13 years. I was teaching the P142 course up until this year. Now I'm just adjunct faculty, but I do mentoring for students. I help them, with references, any knowledge that I can impart. My big area of expertise is geriatrics and pharmacy consulting. So that's something we can talk about. But I've been involved in this NEMA Scholars Program for several years, and I actually brought this to Temple. I was offering opportunities for students in my class to participate. And Kyle, certainly took advantage of that, and he did a great, job in an article, which I'm sure you've seen. And we get students involved, to publish, to get something on your resume. So when you graduate, you have something that nobody else has. It gives you a decided advantage. So I'll be around all semester to help you. You can call me or email me, and any way I can assist you, I'd be happy to do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Bevy. Next, we have Priyanka.
Hi, everyone. I'm Priyanka. I'm a PY3. I'm really excited for this club this semester and to learn more about research through it. And I hope everyone finds it enjoyable.
Thank you. Arena?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm really interested in research and development, and this is one of the reasons why I went to be a pharmacist, to work in the research and development field.
Excellent. Okay, Jamar?
He's not able to make it, actually.
Okay. So Jamar is a PY3, and he is currently our clinical research chair. So he will be involved with like clinical trials and things along that nature. This first meeting is focused more on review articles and kind of like why research is important. But in the future, we're going to start having more discussions about like clinical research and preclinical research and getting involved with research in that at the School of Pharmacy. I was involved with research with mice. I also briefly was involved with a project which involved people. So it was an IRB approved trial. It was before COVID hit, so it wasn't very long, but there are opportunities on campus for that as well. So that will be something we discuss a little later on in the semester. Okay. So Karim?
Hi, everyone. My name's Karim. I'm going to be the current historian for the club. The research that I think you did with mice was with Dr. Walker, if I'm not mistaken. That is Arena and I are actually currently with her right now doing a similar type of research. So we'll be conducting research on mice as well going forward.
That's awesome. And it was a great learning experience. I mean, like, I feel like once you actually handle mice and like see like it happening live in front of you, it gives you a better understanding of where data comes from in animal studies and like why it's so difficult, because it's not as clear sometimes. Like a mouse can't verbally tell you what's wrong with them or what they're feeling. You have to kind of be able to assess, you have to know their behavior in nature, and you have to be able to see any changes in their behavior. So I think it's very interesting from a preclinical standpoint, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay, next we have Jen.
Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer. I'm the social media chair, PY2, and I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Excellent. Claudine?
Hi, I'm Claudine. I'm a PY3. I'm the medical affairs chair. I'm actually interested in industry and medical affairs in particular, but I'm also interested in writing, as I've been writing since I was young. Fun fact, I have a short story published through young authors. So I just want to explore that more in the scientific field.
Very cool. Thank you, Claudine. And lastly, we have Shaq.
Hi, everyone. I'm the biologics chair, and I actually have two publications, peer review publications, one a review paper and another research publication that I did. And I'm currently doing research with the dean on cancer metastasis.
That's actually really cool. Thank you, Shaq. I will look forward to hearing more about that later. Okay, so is Riya on the call? Riya will be talking later on in the presentation about her experience as well. She also was published. Riya, are you on the call?
Yes, hi Kyle, I am. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, Riya. Okay, so we'll go and get through it, and then I'm trying to get through in the next 15-20 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and talk about your experience, my experience, and so on about research, and try and like paint a picture of research as best as we can in the next like 30 or so minutes. Okay, so One thing I want to emphasize about research is I want to establish some expectations, right? So I'm sure some of you can imagine that research is not exactly the most exciting thing, but it's also a time-consuming process and it can be boring at times. Once you complete it and you look back on it, it can be fascinating to see how far you've come. But when you're in the midst of it, when you're kind of, I guess in the forest, like looking for the trees, I guess is the saying, it can be brutal starting out. But once you kind of get some experience and you do it for a little bit, it does get better. Just realize it takes a while and it's going to be a lot of editing involved. Okay. And you might even hit a thing called writer's block, which is where you just can't think of what to write next. That is normal. The best way to overcome that is to walk away from it for a day or two and then come back to it. Sometimes you just need a break. Okay, and then I'm gonna exit out of here for a minute. So I want to show you that this club offers you more than just what we're presenting today in the PowerPoint, right? There's only so much I can present to you in a PowerPoint in an hour's time, right? There's so much out there about research. So I've created other resources for you. I have this website I made. Let me open it up. And I encourage you to come here and look at the files I've uploaded. I've uploaded other PowerPoints for you to review at your own time. If it'll load, there we go. And, again, like I said, there's only so much time that we have here. So a lot of what this is going to offer you is going to be beyond the GBMs. Again, this is a very welcoming environment and I want everyone to get the best of it, but you're not going to learn how to be a researcher in an hour's time. So I'm going to offer my time as much as I can to anybody who needs help. So if you begin writing an article and you need help, myself or Dr. Brevi are always available. I will provide my phone number. You can always text me anytime or email me at any time, and we'll be able to help you as best as we can. But these resources are available to you whenever you want to look at them. We also have a YouTube channel where I have some videos up, kind of like going over my thought process, and it is here linked. I will post a PowerPoint after the meeting. And we have an Instagram page, so I encourage you to follow us as well. So today's agenda, again, like I mentioned, we are focusing on review articles. We're going to talk about briefly how to utilize PubMed. I do have a writing exercise if we have time for it. Maybe I'll just kind of go over it. We have Riya on the call. She's going to be our guest speaker, and she's also going to talk about her experience. And then we'll wrap it up from there. Okay, so far, any questions before we go further into what we're talking about today? Anyone's welcome to share their thoughts. Okay, very good. So what we will not cover today. So like I mentioned, we all have an hour's time. We can't go over everything. We're not going to go over the scientific mindset. So I cover this multiple times in previous PowerPoints, and I actually have posted them on the YouTube channel as well as on the website. So they are available to you 24/7 if you wanted to look into that a little further, to try and get some backstory behind the way you need to think. There is an approach you need to have to be more objective. That way there's no bias. You minimize bias, right? We as humans tend to interpret things and say it's true or false. When in reality, we need to look at the way that it is and just make the best decision, make the best choice that we can from the information that is provided. So just because a study comes out and says that we found this does not mean that actually it's true. It's just what the evidence found. And I'll explain that a little further in the next few slides. But there are PowerPoints up on the website and on the YouTube channel, which kind of explain the way you need to approach research. And we will cover clinical research and preclinical research in subsequent meetings, okay? And I have a screenshot here of the website on here. So you're welcome to go to the website at any point. Okay, so why is research important? Why is it interesting, right? Because research is needed to find new information or update old information, right? So it may seem as though there's not a lot of room for research. Like it seems like we have really come a long ways when it comes to medicine, but in reality, there's a lot of gray areas, right? When you're in school, especially in P&T, you'll be going over guidelines and, maybe like flow charts of what to give. But in reality, very few patients meet like a textbook patient where they're like a perfect match for, a certain intervention, right? I would say currently being in a PY4 and being on my clinical rotation, I am constantly seeing times where we have to go outside of the guidelines because there's just these unclear gray areas. Maybe there are certain medications that contradict what the guidelines say. So it's not always cut and dry, right? And also things are changing. Like, for example, I just was told today, like for delirium, we have been for decades giving antipsychotics for delirium. But today I was told that more research is coming out recently saying that Depakote actually is better for delirium. So something that's been accepted for decades now all of a sudden is changing. So very few things are on the ends here, where they're either fully true or fully false. Things that are like considered to be false and pretty much no one argues with it include like the following, like the heart makes blood. We know that like bone marrow makes blood. Tylenol is not an NSAID, right? Bloodletting was an old tactic used hundreds of years ago where people would actually, make a cut and kind of like let blood out. And the idea is that by bleeding someone out, you're going to essentially let the disease bleed out of them. And we learned a long time ago that is not effective. But back in the day, before science really evolved, we actually believed that worked. And things that are considered to be true, atorvastatin metabolized by 3A4, right? A1C is reflection of long-term glucose, right? Some of your fundamentals, a lot of these are pretty much established and they're not going to be changing anytime soon. But a lot of these unclear areas are constantly changing or growing. And sometimes what we accept to be as true or old is actually old, outdated information. So for example, most people would agree that a normal resting heart rate is 60 to 100 beats per minute. But we really should reconsider the definition of normal, right? So I have here in the study that people who have heart rate greater than 70 beats per minute have a higher risk of developing all kinds of comorbidity, right? So for example, cardiovascular events, all-cause mortality, among other things, have been associated with a higher heart rate, even if it's below 100. So even though the evidence is starting to show that it's not entirely true, most people still say 60 to 100. But it just comes to show that a lot of things that we have accepted and just not even questioned may not be as true as we think that it is. And that is why research is important. In addition, guidelines are kind of like pathways for making decisions, but guidelines are based on the evidence, the data that's out there. If there's not much data out there, or if it's conflicting data, or if it's not strong data, the guidelines are going to have to reflect that because it's all of that it's available, right? So for example, this is in the PADIS guidelines for critical care. This is a guideline that thousands of people read every year. And a lot of like providers and pharmacists alike will use this to make decisions. And in this guidelines, we have one recommendation of many. This is just one example where the authors even acknowledge that the evidence is very low quality. And they only pulled one study of like 60 people. And they use this one study to actually make a recommendation. So all these pharmacists and doctors are reading the guidelines and saying, okay, they recommend this, but the recommendation is based off of very poor quality data. So it comes to show that just because it's in the guidelines does not mean that it is completely true. It's just based on what's out there. That's why they're always changing, because new studies come out, new data comes out, and then the guidelines change. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up research, why it's important. Again, I was just briefly touching on it. Now we're going to jump into review articles. So regarding like research and why it's important, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so everyone on the call here, I want you to take this link and bookmark it. So I'll show you what I mean here. So I bookmarked it in my browser. I have it right here. And this will bring you to the Temple University Library page. And then on the bottom right here, you see PubMed. And this will bring you into PubMed through Temple University. So it allows you to access many more articles that you wouldn't be able to access if you were viewing it as like a free user. So part of your tuition, I mean, we're paying, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in tuition. Part of your tuition is having access to this version of PubMed and all the databases that Temple is connected to. So while you're a student, definitely take advantage of having this because it allows you to access all kinds of resources that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. So I'll post it in the chat. I would recommend that everybody bookmark this. And again, I just reemphasize where you're going to go to PubMed. Okay, so other useful links I want to kind of look into. For this one, you can just go on Google and just type in unique word counter, right? And what this does is you can actually copy and paste a section of your paper into it, and it'll tell you if you've been using too many, one word too many times, if you're being overly redundant, right? So like I have my one paper here that I got published on vaping. Okay, this froze. Okay, well, that just froze on me. I tried a different one. So like, for example, I could copy this paragraph. Unique word counter. It's by Planet Calc. And it'll actually break it down for you. So these are the number of unique words I have that appeared like it was their first time appearing, and how many words are total. So it gives you a ratio of how many words are unique and how many words are total. Obviously, the more unique words you have, the more like rich the language is, right? And the higher level the writing is. So it helps you identify if you're being overly redundant. I use this a lot when I was writing my paper, and it helped make my paper flow much more nicely. And then BibGuru, okay. This allows you to just copy and paste a citation, and it'll give you the citation in AMA for you. So you can just copy the URL. And like, for example, I'll go to PubMed again. Then, yeah, I'll just type in, I don't know, red wine or something like that. And then I can just copy it. Yeah, and do like this. Copy. I'll just go back to PubMed. Anyway, point is you copy and paste the link in the URL in here, and it'll actually generate you the citation for you, like in real time. Okay. Okay, so review articles are important, just like trials. So people may think that review articles are not as valuable, but they serve a different purpose. So review articles are designed to take what's currently out there in the literature and kind of put it together into one spot. So if you're a clinician, you're going to have time to read through 20 clinical trials and try and analyze if it's like a biased or unbiased study, or you know, try and draw conclusions based on how it was designed. Instead, a review article will take all that for you, put it in one spot. Hello? Okay. So it is useful. And so here are some questions I was asked on rotations where I had to access a review article to answer the question in real time. So I was asked, like, what degree of renal suppression do patients taking 5 to 10 milligrams of prednisone daily experience? I was asked this by a physician on rounds, and I found the review article. I read through it, I found the table, and I actually answered the question from that. So instead of going through clinical trial after clinical trial, just found a review article that kind of summarized all the data out there for me, and I was able to get the data in like 2 minutes. Okay, and among other examples. So they do serve a purpose. And there are really 2 kinds of review articles. There's really a third one. It's called a meta-analysis, which is much more powerful. But as a student, you probably would not be working on meta-analysis. It does require you to have a very high level of understanding of statistics, and you need to have a lot of software to do that. So we don't have access to that usually. So more than likely, you'll be working on one of these 2. Okay. So a narrative review is a collection of information that is used to inform the readers. So an example of a narrative review is like the effects of vaping on COVID-19. You're just reviewing the topic. You're kind of curious about what it's about, so you look it up and find a review that tells you a little bit about it, right? Whereas a systematic review is where you use a methodical search to answer a specific question. You try and find clinical trials, which all have one similar theme, and you're looking for common patterns across these trials to answer a question. So for example, how do neurostimulators affect opioid consumption? I have a paper here that I wrote. I'm currently getting published. And this is a systematic review. So as you can see, my methods, I used a couple searches. I documented my searches. On PubMed, I did neurostimulation and opioid consumption. I used meshed headings. And then I also searched the Cochrane trials. And then for my results, I have this table, right, where we have the author. I highlighted the risk of bias. This is not necessary. You don't need to do this, but you highlight, the trial design, number of patients, the duration. You highlight the outcomes and the key results. And you're looking to find patterns across the trials to answer a question. And the answer to my question in this trial was that neurostimulators were effective at reducing opioid consumption. It decreased opioid consumption on average about 45%. So I'm just highlighting here the differences between 2 different kinds of review articles. Okay. So we're going to go through some basic steps. Again, I can't go through every single step of how to write a review article in a short amount of time. I'm just kind of giving you an overview. I can get you started. And then what we can do is individually, we can meet and go over your topic. And I can help you along the way, guide you. Okay. So my first suggestion is to pick a topic you are familiar with, right? So if you pick a topic you don't know anything about from the beginning, it'll be so much harder to write it because you don't really know where to start, right? So for example, I'm not a cardiologist. I have an idea about like QT prolongation and how the heart works, but I wouldn't want to write an article about all kinds of various EKG changes because I don't even know really what they are. So I would probably miss a lot of things in my search because I wouldn't know what I was looking at. So pick a topic you are more familiar with or you're interested in, and use your baseline knowledge, your clinical knowledge, to guide you in your search of what to look for. That is why usually people who publish articles in medicine are usually clinicians or people who are like students in a pharmacy school or a medical school, because they already have been taught some things about each subject. So for example, I wrote a paper, I'm working on a paper on red wine and pain. So there's some things I already know about red wine and pain, right? I know that red wine contains ethanol, and I know how ethanol works, the mechanism works on GABA. I know it contains polyphenols, including resveratrol. I know it's been associated with health benefits. So I can use this as a guide, right? And then about pain, I know that anxiety or depression can worsen pain. I know that there are many neurological pathways and like neurostimulators and biomarkers involved in pain, like substance P, for example, and prostaglandins, among others. All right. I know that there are numerous drugs. I know, NSAIDs, opioids, adjuvants, anticonvulsants, among others. So because I have this baseline knowledge, I can then begin to branch off of that to find new information. The next step, and don't worry, I will send this to everybody after we're done, but I'm just kind of going through it here. So the next suggestion I have is to survey PubMed, right? So there are plenty of databases available. PubMed, I think, is the best for a beginner or an intermediate researcher. As you get more involved in research, you might start like reviewing like the Cochrane Trials database, and others. I'm trying to think of the other one. It was I don't remember. But there's another one that is commonly referenced in the literature. I'll have to look it up and email it out later. But PubMed is what I recommend initially. You're going to use the titles, right, to guide you with what articles to read. So if your topic is on like Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and in your search you get an article about anaphylaxis, you can probably skip that one because it's not really related. I mean, there is a connection somewhere, but it's not your topic. So document your searches, right, and the date you search them. So I have a document here. I have the date. I put my search, right? I copy and pasted the search I used. I highlighted how many filters I used. I used no filters, and this gave me 0 results. This one, pain and wine, we 15 relevant results, 24 total. So 9 of the results had nothing to do with red wine and pain, right? So I eliminated them. And it's kind of a little bit based on your judgment. You have to determine if it's relevant or not. Usually you can tell, but sometimes it's kind of a gray area. Use your judgment to determine if you should include it or not. And so on and so forth. So in this case, on this date, I got 41 results that were relevant, that were unique. And do not worry about finding every possible article out there in the literature. I mean, there are millions of articles. There's got to be millions of articles out there in the literature. You're going to miss some things. That's just the way it is. Like, I know that on my vaping paper, there were things that I know I missed about vaping and about COVID-19, but you're not trying to capture every single piece of information. You're trying to capture what you can find to show patterns or a lack thereof. Sometimes there is no pattern, and then you can just say in your article that you didn't find anything pertinent. Lack of findings are still findings. Okay, so step 3, you want to organize your findings. So you can use the clipboard function in PubMed to filter out duplicate results. Sometimes if you search similar things, you're going to get similar results. So instead of having 500 results, you might actually have 300 results, and 200 of them were repeated. So I'll show you that in a minute. You can read the abstract to decide if the article is worth delving further into. Sometimes the abstract, all you have is the abstract, right? Sometimes you can't get the full article. That's just unfortunately the way that it is. Other times, everything you need to know is in the abstract. So that saves you some reading, okay? Try and narrow your search. So maybe you would go on to PubMed. I'll go here. And let's say you do red wine and pain. Well, let's say I think 43 results is a little bit much. I can scroll this over and maybe do from 2014 on. Now I'm down to 22. Well, now I just want to have clinical trials. And now I have none there. So I could try and do like another kind of review. I got 1 result. So you can narrow your searches with filters and by narrowing the years. That way you're not reading as much. And remember, document everything in Word. So document your findings, the articles you use in Word. That way you don't forget about it later. And again, just to highlight again, record all your findings, good or bad. Even if it goes against what you're trying to find, like maybe you're trying to find an association and really there is none. Don't cherry pick your results, record everything, because if there's no connection, that can kind of reassure the medical community that there's no connection and it will not require further investigation. Okay. So that pretty much summarizes that. Does anybody have any questions? And again, I provided more resources on the website and on the YouTube channel. Any questions so far?
So how did you do the bias risk for your one paper?
Ah, yes. Let me find that real quick for you. Give me 1 second. I believe it was on the Cochrane trials. Here it is. And this is kind of subjective. So it's like current version. Yeah, that's not it. Yeah, well, there was a document I had. I'll have to find it for you. But basically, it listed 7 parameters to try and like identify bias, right? And it is subjective, so it's not like you can like say for sure it's biased or unbiased. You kind of have to use your own judgment with it. But you basically look at the article and say, is there, was there information that was excluded that we don't know about? Were there co-founders that could have affected the results? Was it a large or small study, right? So it's a risk of bias tool by Cochrane Trials. I'm trying to find it here. I also know Joanne sent me one too. She's with NEMA Scholars.
So does adding something like that like increase the validity of your paper, or does it just, is it like important per se?
So it's not so much that it's important, but what it could do is it could help eliminate a question you might get from like a peer reviewer later. So like I have also up here a document where I went through peer review. Let me pull that up for you too. So in this document, this is when I was going through my vaping paper. Right. So here are some comments I got. They asked me for some pathophysiology information. They asked me some highlights the novelty. And so they may question and say, how do you know these studies actually were valid? How do you know that these studies were, good studies to pull your data from and make your conclusions? And if you did a risk of bias assessment, you can kind of use that to answer that question. So it's just one of those things where you're just kind of checking off another check mark and saying that you looked at something else, which, could have influenced your data. It's not required, but it's something that kind of strengthens your assessment where, if all of them were biased, then you could say in your conclusion that because all the studies were biased, it's difficult to make a conclusion. And it's totally okay if you say in your conclusion that there's not really a clear answer. Like that just emphasizes the need for more research. Does that help?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah, it's not required. It's just something that I did to kind of emphasize like the validity of the data. So I think I had, let me go to here. I had some that were unclear risk. So I could then in the discussion say that this is unclear risk and it's not really sure if the data supports what I'm trying to find in my study, kind of thing. Whereas a low risk study might be a little stronger and I'm more certain about what the study found. Okay. So I tried to go as fast as possible. I do apologize if I was going a little fast. I was trying to get through all of it. I unfortunately don't think I have time to go through the exercises, but we do have Riya on the call. So I do want to pass it over to Riya for the next 15 minutes to talk about her experience, what she went through, because I always feel like it's important to have more than one perspective on this, right? I want you to hear from other people who also were successful. So Riya, I'll pass it off to you. If you want to tell us about what you went through and how doing research helped get you to where you are today and helped you land a fellowship.
Yeah, certainly. So good evening, everyone. And I'm very excited that all of you have decided to take this step to further your career in whatever field that you're interested in. And I really hope that this experience helps you the same way that it did with me. I had joined NEMA in my second year of pharmacy school. So around that time, COVID had just started and a lot of internship opportunities in pharma had kind of taken a hit because everyone was going virtual and a lot of internships got canceled left and right. And Dr. Bravi had mentioned this opportunity in one of our classes, and it just piqued my interest at the time. And we decided to, my friend and I, and Kyle, of course, and many other people from our class, we decided to take advantage of this. And about 2 years in, like when I look back at the entire experience, I would say it was one of the most profound experiences that I've had, not just in terms of getting a publication out, but also in terms of understanding how to perform research or how to conduct literature searches, like Kyle just explained, and learning little nuances like how to take criticism when you are writing a paper for the first time. A lot of us are not used to that kind of critique on our work, and especially for someone like me, I had never written anything scientifically. For me, I had just written a lot of fictional stories and poetry back in high school and college. So this was just a completely different ball game, and it's very supportive too, in the sense that everyone at NEMA wants you to do better in your paper, and we go through an internal peer review as well before we submit it to Curious in my case, or even Sigma Vitae or any other journals. And so you have an idea of the kind of language that is expected from you, and you're not left alone to your own devices trying to figure those things out. And it just so happened that it became kind of a ladder for me personally, because it helped me land my first internship the following summer with Novo Nordisk, and then slowly transitioning into strong talking point in all of my fellowship interviews as well. And even the work that I would be doing in my fellowship is very closely related to the nuances that I learned performing medical writing through NEMA and doing all that work. And that is something that has helped me tremendously, and it still continues to help me each day. I'm still in relationship with people that I met through NEMA, Dr. Magnuson, Joanne, like Kyle mentioned. So these are the kind of relationships that you build early on in your career, and it just helps you tremendously navigate in terms of navigating the kind of experiences that you would want in your career.
Thank you, Riya. So I have a question for you. So how is it starting out? So I think that the hardest part for students getting involved in research is like getting started. Like, what do you think helped you in the beginning part of it, when you really, the instruction was not super clear where to start? How did you go from, having no paper to having a full paper? Like, what are some tips you might have?
So the important thing is, I think Harvard, was it Harvard Neuroscience, or there was a really good website that was shared with us initially when we started out at NEMA, and it had examples of the kind of sections that a review article or a systematic review or meta-analysis or other articles as such would have. And I followed a rough skeleton of that format, trying to compile all of my research. And that is what helped me with the initial draft of my manuscript, just seeing the different sections and the kind of basis that they would cover. Because when they have a peer review, when you compare essentially two products, which was one of my papers, I compared Praluent with Repatha in one of my papers. And the kind of language that you use, also, you have to think from the perspective of someone who might question you as to why specifically you're using the kind of language that you do. So that also helps you give a different perspective of looking at your own work and trying to add those little points and nuances as well. And when we go through an internal peer review, those are also the points that are usually brought up in terms of the data that you choose to present and the language that you use in your work. And initially, it's very difficult to get over the writer's block, like Kyle mentioned. My first paper, I started drafting it in June 2020, and it didn't get published until December 2021, just because a lot of things happened in between. Sometimes you just don't want to, get yourself up after exams and get to doing something like this. But at the same time, when you do bring up an experience like this in your interviews, without having any incentive to write papers or without having any vested interest, not knowing whether or not it would get published, it just sets you apart from your competition so much that even though it might seem like a little roadblock right now, the key is to at least keep writing maybe 400 or 500 words a day, just anything that you can think of, and at least getting that first draft out of the way so that you have something to work on and critique and improve on the entire time. And once that draft is out, half of your work is basically cut out for you. You just keep editing and keep adding finishing touches to it, and it just keeps getting better and better. Because at the end of the day, when you compare your first draft with your final paper, which you will be submitting to your journal, it's just a night and day's difference. And it's just so fulfilling and satisfying that you will forget all the pain that you went through for sure. So those are some of the challenges that I had. My second paper, I wrote it in 15 days, the first draft, I churned it out. But when the criticism came in, sometimes you just don't have it in yourself to answer all of these questions that they have, or you might not be able to look up information just because there's so much going on at school. So even peer review might take a lot of your time sometimes. So those are just a few things to be mindful of. And like I said, consistency is key. Just keep doing it little by little each day, and don't be demotivated by anything that you're feeling in the moment. It's a process for sure. And just keep your eyes on the bigger picture.
Thank you, Riya. Does anybody have any questions for Riya? I'll share my experience as well. I know I went over the PowerPoint, but I'll share my experience as well with NEMA and publishing. Does anybody have any questions for Riya? Like maybe like how it helped her, like how it helped her with fellowships and so on and so forth. Okay, thank you, Riya. Is there anything else you want to add? I do appreciate all of your time that you've taken today to go over your experience. Is there any other like tidbits or tips that you think that everyone should know, or anything that you might otherwise recommend for students starting out?
I think besides the things that you shared today, just it is important to know that writing this paper in and itself will not get you where you want to go. It's like I said, it's just a ladder. You have to be able to speak to your work, and you have to be able to share your entire thought process as you wrote this paper, because at the end of the day, that is what people are looking for on the other side of the table when they interview you. At least for me, that was the experience. Because for my fellowship and for my internships, I was asked as to how exactly I would start out with conducting a research in general. So you have to be acquainted with what you're doing, and you have to be very thorough with that process before you even think about starting to write. And it just makes the entire process much easier once you get more clarity on it, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. One thing I will say is that no matter how good your paper, no matter how good you think your paper is, someone's going to find something, right? I mean, not to like pat myself on the back, but I consider myself to be a pretty strong writer. I got a lot of compliments from the NEMA team, and they still picked it apart. Like, it's not going to be perfect. I mean, you got to do your best. One of my suggestions when you write is to be as concise as possible. I think some people think that a bigger paper is better. That's not true. If you can convey your entire message in 2 pages, then it's 2 pages, right? Use a minimum amount of language as possible. Nobody wants to read a 30-page paper. I mean, a lot of us have been through journal clubs. Do you want to read a 30-page paper? I know I don't. Right? Imagine if you're busy in the field and you have 100 patients, you have time to read the whole paper. You don't. So more is not always better. I mean, if it requires that much space because it was that much information, then sure. But be a minimalist, right? So be concise. And when you are interpreting the information, try not to draw any hard conclusions. I mentioned this before, but if the data looks as though it's promising, don't just say, well, it looks this way. You want to just present the information you found and leave up to the readers to decide that, right? You're just presenting the information. You're not really going to be the one who decides it. The experts in the field who are reading your work are going to be the ones who really decide if it's relevant to them or not, right? Because once you begin putting in your own opinion into things, it can begin skewing it a little bit. You can kind of bring up like ideas as to why certain things came up, why you need more research here, why, this, having 10 patients was not very strong versus 100 patients. But otherwise, you're just here to present it. And, as I mentioned before, we only have so much time in an hour to go over everything. If anybody wants to meet with me, meet with, Dr. Brevi at all, we can certainly help you as much as we can. We can kind of go over your topic, go through PubMed, and kind of give you tips to get started. If anyone is interested, I will provide my email in the chat. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, so we're pretty much at the end of the meeting today. I hope this was informative, or at least kind of gave you an idea of what to expect out of research and where to start. The hardest part about it is really getting started. And another thing I want to mention to you is that it takes a while to do this. Don't feel as though you're behind because you're focused on school, right? So if it takes you 6 months to write it, I mean, so be it. My first manuscript took me about 8 months to write, right? And that's because school was busy. I mean, school is a priority, right? You shouldn't fall behind in school to write a paper. But if you have time between exams or even over the summer or on winter break, definitely work on it when you feel comfortable. I just try to avoid having really large gaps between when you work on it, because believe me, if you do a big search and find all this information and then you walk away for 6 months and you come back, you're not going to remember where you left off. You're going to forget everything. So if you're going to take a break, a few weeks or a month is fine, but try to avoid big, long gaps. I made that mistake with my one paper. I walked away for like 6 months and I came back to it and I started from scratch basically. Okay, but don't be discouraged, and always ask questions. It's complicated at first. Once you get the hang of it and you see more and more papers and you read more and more things, you begin to notice patterns about how they're structured and written. Okay. Dr. Brevi, do you have any other comments you want to add? Okay. So what I would suggest, if everyone could put in your email in the chat, if you have not done so previously. I know some of you are on the call who have previously been on a meeting and I have your email, but if you are new to the club, please post your email in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll begin forwarding you like topics that are available through NEMA.
Right.
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 Ms. Brevi? Hi.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah. I have a list that I will be sending to everybody in this group. So, Kyle, if you could put together a circulation list and email it to me so that I can contact everybody, and I will send that list out to everybody. That's you can look and see if you're interested. If you have any ideas yourself, if a particular topic interests you and you want to research something, certainly just let me know, and I'll run that by the team. We're meeting again next week, and I'll certainly say what a great meeting this was, this great kickoff meeting. And also what we have to put together a schedule of future meetings that we can, you know, I can put them on my calendar so I'll be able to attend them. So other than that, I mean, if you want me to come up to the school sometime and we have a live meeting, I'll be happy to do that. Just let me know.
All right, very good. Yeah, in about 3 weeks, I'll be done my current rotation, so I'll be able to have the next meeting in person. The first meeting, of course, because of schedule conflicts and because of my current rotation, I couldn't be in person, but the next one I am expecting to be in person. And then what we'll do is we'll begin kind of going over like writing the manuscript more in detail. I am more than happy to meet with anybody who's currently on the call. In fact, I'll be emailing everyone after this meeting that gave their email, and I'll be forwarding the topic list as well as offering any time that they want to go over with me or with you, Dr. Brevi, to kind of get started on the topic, right? Because again, the hardest part is getting started. Once you kind of get the wheels turning, it does get easier. It just seems overwhelming initially. But believe me, if Riya can do it, if I can do it, if Dr. Brevi can do it, so can you. We all started somewhere. It's just a matter of getting started. And again, I can only explain so much in a meeting. Part of it is going out there and doing it and just getting your hands dirty and reading the articles. There's not really an easy way of doing it. But believe me, as you do it more and more, you'll get faster at it. Like on my rotation, I'm reviewing patient charts. My first few patients I go over, it took me over an hour to go through everything and try and find all the information about them. As you do it more and more, you begin recognizing patterns and recognizing faster ways. Next thing you know, I'm doing a patient in 30 minutes, in 20 minutes. And then eventually, if you get like really experienced, you can do it in 5 or 10 minutes. I don't want to discourage anybody, but that's usually how it starts off. So I promise you, if you do it enough, it'll get easier. And then you'll be able to carry the skills over to you with 2 rotations in the interviews for fellowships or residency. It will be worthwhile. It's just a matter of actually going out there and doing it. We can bring you to the water, but we can't make you drink. Okay. So our goal is to help you is to bring you to the water and provide you everything we can. Ultimately, you determine your own success with it. Okay. Any other questions? Last minute questions before we wrap it up? Okay, everyone. Thank you for your time. I will be documenting the emails here. Be on the lookout for the next email. And if any of you want to meet with me, we will be talking soon. All right, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you,
Thank
Riya.
you, Kyle. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye, guys.
Hey, Kyle, are you still on the call or are you leaving right now?
I'm still here. Yes, I have to
Okay.
document all the emails.
Can I ask you real quick? Oh, I'm sorry, Claudine.
No, I just wanted to make sure it's okay if I'm on the line because I also had some questions.
It's okay. Yeah.
I wanted to just ask you about a topic that I was looking at recently. I did find some articles on it and I actually started reading the articles earlier today. It was about Enbosarm. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Sorry, the recording. Let me stop recording real quick.
Okay.
Stop recording.